Just your general feel. I know Leafs fans are feeling really, really down, KB. You've covered this team quite a bit the last couple of years. How are you feeling going into Game 6?
Oh, for me, I mean, of course, I'm, a couple different degrees removed from it than a hardcore Leaf fan, of course. I come at it from a different perspective, but I think it's, again, like I go back to how Tampa did things last year when they were on the ropes. I think about, Cup final, Game 5. They went into Denver. That city was ready to party, and they stole it and took it all away. And ultimately, they did lose the series in 6. But just going into a hostile environment and getting a result when maybe the deck was stacked against you a little bit on the outside, like there's just no panic there. So I think it's setting up for great drama again. And I remember having a conversation with my colleague Craig Simpson before the series, and his big thing was, if you're the Leafs, there's got to be the mindset of we've got to beat them quick, because the longer the series goes on, the more the history in the last 6-7 years in particular, but of course 19 without getting past the first round, come into play, and already we're kind of seeing that here now. So I don't think it was a poor game on Toronto's side. When in the grand scheme of things, they managed to make it close and we're pushing there again to the end. But I just thought, the middle six for Tampa completely took over the game, and the Leafs didn't have an answer to it. So back we go for a Saturday night Game 6.
Are we making enough, Kyle, about AndreVasilevski? Like on a daily basis, you're around greatness and stars around this league with whatever you do. But AndreVasilevski, I said this earlier on, and I'm not standing back from it. I do think he's already in my Mount Rushmore of goalies, period, ever in the NHL. And it's tough to quantify, but like this guy always seems to show up when it matters most. And I thought by far that was his best effort last night. Would you agree?
Without question. I mean, it still wasn't, I don't know if you call it perfect, of course, but I thought, a couple of critical moments when the Leafs were swarming a bit. They had second, third opportunities, rebounds around the net, and he was there. And you could just see early on, like there's so much just from a psychological perspective on the Tampa bench where, okay, he's been shaky. Goals have been getting by him the first 4 games of this series, uncharacteristic for what we know Vasilevski to be. And for him to settle in after that early goal to Morgan Rielly last night, you could just tell on the bench there was like, okay, there's the guy that we know. And the belief and just that confidence that they've got in him was back again. Not to say that it was shaken, but just a great reminder of who he is. So, it's funny how the discourse was going on about him in the 2 days off in between games 4 and 5, and the sarcastic line by him, but maybe I got to get some bleeping X-ray glasses to see through traffic. He was ready to go. He was wired to prove doubters wrong. He talked to teammates, the coaches there around Tampa. They've got his back through and through because they see the work that he puts in behind the scenes to get himself ready. Obviously, the big performances he's had over the years. So I think that was the least surprising part of the night for me was how he performed.
Obviously, you're quite familiar with the name Morgan Rielly from where you're from and all that, but man, like he has really, really stepped up. And we said this going into the Stanley Cup playoffs, just the fact that he really can rectify a wrong from the regular season, if you want to call it that. He wasn't great. I think he'd be the first to admit that. It was a tough year for him, but he has been so good. Would you argue Morgan Rielly is playing the best hockey of his career right now?
Yeah, I mean, the was that the 18-19 season when the production was off the charts, and I even thought he had a pretty good playoff there. I know in a loss to 7 games to Boston that season, but that was a pretty damn good version of Morgan Rielly, and this one certainly is too. And yeah, that's a beauty part of playoffs, right? Like you get to game 1 of the first round and everything goes back to 0, and it can work both ways. Like you can outdo a great regular season with a bad playoffs, and you can totally rewrite what had been a tough year with a great playoff. And certainly he's going down, option B right now. It's been fun to watch. And I think, the presence of Luke Schenn, I think hasn't been insignificant in that as well. Just a good calming presence there. Obviously, the foot speed of Schenn isn't going to blow anybody away, but is smart with some of a lot of his decision making. He's been around it. I think it's a great kind of partner tandem for Morgan to have it at this stage of things. Obviously, you got Brody and McCabe handling a lot of the tougher matchups, but it frees a guy like Rielly up to, as we again saw in the opening goal last night, jump up in the rush, hell of a shot to go posting in there on Vasilevsky's glove side. there's just, you can tell a great deal of a belief in his own game. And, after it seemed like, how long did it go into the regular season before he finally got his first this year? And now he seems to be scoring at will. It's a total role reversal, but he's earned it. The longest serving Leaf. You can tell there's just such a determination to try to push this through from his perspective.
There has been so many layers and so many layers in general to talk about in this series. I think one that doesn't really get spoken about enough is the gamesmanship behind the bench and the two coaches going back and forth in the media, man. Like, I've had so much fun watching that play out, whether it be John Cooper or Sheldon Keith. What have you made of that? And has anything changed, do you feel, in your approach when it comes to Sheldon Keith and how he reacts following losses? Because I do sense a bit of a determination, or like it doesn't matter what happens, the Leafs are always trying to stay positive. And I mean, that's all you can pretty much do in this scenario, right?
Yeah, and that's an interesting, I was thinking the same thing, Nick. Like, I just feel, I don't know what it is, what the proper word is to describe it, but certainly you're seeing from Sheldon, there's a lot more, I feel there's a lot more engaging just in the conversations with the media, whether it's the press conference or, we as the broadcast right holders, we'll do a chat with them like off camera in the morning before games with both head coaches. And it's just, it just feels a lot more personable, and whether that just has come from his time now as head coach in a market like Toronto, a little more comfortable in what you're doing and who you are and stuff. And so I will say, it's been kind of refreshing to hear his thoughts and things through the good and the tougher moments so far of the series. And and then John Cooper's just his own cat, right? Like, it's just it's always must see TV whenever he steps up to the podium after a win, after a loss. And because, part of it is just his natural ability as quite the wordsmith. The lawyer background certainly doesn't help, but he's also won too, right? Like, there isn't that same, anywhere close to the same sort of pressure on his shoulders of, oh God, we got to get through the first round this year. We got to beat Toronto. Obviously they want to, but it's just a completely different ball game for them. So there's certainly a relaxed nature to that. He's got a great way of having fun with different narratives, and will take an opportunity to latch on to anything he can. So it's two completely different kind of styles, but we've seen them clash at a few times. But I do know, I mean, there's clearly a pretty good deal of respect between the two. They've gotten to know each other a little bit over the last few years, going through the Olympic process. Before that was Kai Bosch last season, kind of kickstarted that. So it's a great chess match, whether you're on the bench during the game or behind the microphone in between games, between the two for the second straight year.
I always joke with Coop that he's like the Minnesota Miracle Man. Like, he's Gordon Bombay in real life, just with the lawyer background and all that stuff. And it's just been so
Totally.
fascinating from that stuff. Yeah, it's I don't know. He
Yeah.
laughs all the time, but I'm like, dude, you're the guy with minus the DUI, of course, when it comes to Gordon Bombay. Lastly, just get your
Yeah.
thoughts here on Game 6. The anticipation obviously is already building in this market. I hope that's not the announcement for your flight, by the way. But Michael Bunting, do
No,
you see a scenario where he comes in, maybe even Timothy Liljegren?
Yeah, first off, I mean, it's great that you made the Bombay reference with a D2 poster behind your shoulder, Nick. So well done on that
You
part.
like that,
But, oh, I love it. And that's my favorite of the trilogy, I got to say.
So good.
So I think Bunting will get in. Whether it's Sam Lafferty or Zach Aston-Reese, I mean, neither really played much. That fourth line, that's a bit of a surprise to me. How good that line was that last maybe month of the regular season. Obviously, a different ball game in the playoffs, but just haven't been the same level of effectiveness. So I could see the change happening there for sure. The defense side of things, I don't know. Like, I understand the numbers around Justin Hall haven't been great, and as Keith pointed out after the game, last time I checked, he's not on the ice alone. But to put someone like, whether it's Timothy Liljegren or an Eric Gustafsson, whoever it may be, in a spot like this now, Game 6 back in Tampa, and you haven't played in a while, that's a real tough thing to come in and do. And Justin Hall, I mean, if it's not TJ Brody and Mark Giordano going out first for the penalty kill, then it's usually him and Jake McCabe that come up afterwards. So I think the coaching staff certainly still sees his value in those scenarios. I wouldn't be surprised, despite, I'm sure, a lot of calls for change on the back end, if things stayed the same there, and Bunting is kind of the one switch it forward for Game 6.